Welcome to the Next Chapter Experience podcast with Jeanette Lissette. Thought leaders explore the mindset, wellness, and wealth needed to realize next level transformation. Let's get started. So we were to do a comparison between where you are today and let's say where you were, say, 10, 12 years ago.
It's almost 3 years today, almost like about a month away, it'll be 13 years. I came to a conclusion that my relationship with alcohol was not good for me. I had a really, pardon using the popular terminology and pardon the pun, but I had a very toxic relationship with alcohol. And for those that know, alcohol is very toxic on us personally and mentally and emotionally. But I learned early on in life, manage my social anxiety. Alcohol was a wonderful thing. It was something, a couple drinks in, and all of a sudden, normally I'd be the wallflower off in the side, just observing and waiting for people to come to talk to me rather than being the one that would be proactive enough to go up, shake hands and introduce myself and meet new people. I'm naturally introverted, but I choose to work as an extrovert. So I've had some people say I'm an ambivert, so I flex between the two. But between you and I, Jeanette, and I do a keynote as an example. I do a 60 to 90 minute talk in front of a large group or sometimes small groups, doesn't matter the size. I still deal with a lot of anxiety before I get up on stage. Like my hands are sweating, my heart rate's racing, and I'm like, oh gosh, what am I talking about? Why am I here? And so the anxiety's still there, but with a lot of practice. And over the last 13 years, really focusing on that work, inner work especially, I've been able to get to a place where I can harness that nervousness in a healthy way to make an impact. And I think that was something that I had to get out of my own way to do. And that's one of the most significant differences in the last 10 years. It's so interesting, right? If I met myself, my 13-year-ago version of me, I'd be like, who the heck are you? And I think they'd be looking at me thinking the same thing because it's just such a change. This is the wonderful example of just how time and this sounding of time works either positively in our favor, right? And I'll have clients and they like their glasses of wine. And I'm not here to vilify alcohol. Please don't take me out of context. But one extra glass of alcohol above and beyond what you need to consume in a day, from a caloric example, that seemingly small 150 calories a day, you compound out 150 extra calories a day for 365 days, that's about a 5 to 8 pound increase in body fat.
Wow.
But it's just one little glass of wine a day. But it's amazing. That's, again, Einstein said, or I guess he's coined it as one of the 8 wonders of the world was compound interest, right? Mm-hmm. Next to love, he said it's the 2 most powerful forces in the world or universe. And I think he's right. But we can compound things positively. It doesn't have to be a negative. But I think we forget that it is those little habits that we think that aren't a problem, but over time become a problem. And we wake up one morning, we're like, whoa, I got an extra 100 pounds on me. Where did that come from? It's, I guess, those 5 years of eating the way I've been eating and not moving my body. This is the effect. And I can speak to that as well, because at age 9, I went down a path of dealing with a lot of mental health challenges, et cetera. And eventually by 15, I was morbidly obese. Plenty to unpack there too. But I know you asked for 3, but that's the one thing that really pops front of mind, Jeanette, is how much I've changed mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually in the last 3 years. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened because I chose for it to happen.
That's powerful. That's powerful right there. I've heard you share on many platforms that you focused initially on the exterior, on the outside. Yeah. And then you realized that you needed to go deeper. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I was slow to that one, okay? Slow to that learning. And what I mean by that was it took me about 32 years of being on this planet before I figured out, oh, maybe if I start focusing internally rather than on everything that's outside of me, maybe I can actually make some systemic changes that will impact how I'm feeling about my life. Because I was always chasing something outside of me. Always. For me, it was affirmations, praise, to be seen as important and of value, and looking for that consistent validation. And that's what I was always chasing. And I was chasing it any way I could get it. I was starving for attention. I could try to unpack this, and believe me, my psychologists that I've worked with, they've all helped me with this. So I got it reframed in a much healthier way now. But when I think back on it, I didn't know any better because of the role models that were in my life. And the people that I associated with the most, they were all trying to figure it out too. We were all just trying to make a go at it. I'm staring down the barrel of 46 years old. At the time that we're having this conversation, in 3 days, I turned 46. But with that realization is also that, wow, 46 years of experiences, and not all of them positive. Many of the ones that were negative, I used to find that my brain would get hooked on those and repeat those experiences again and again. So I was always living in this sort of fearful state of regret, and it would often paralyze me taking a step forward in my life. And if I think about that in my 20s, and it was just because I didn't have the resources, nor did I have the faculties or understanding of what to ask, and most importantly, how to ask for help.
I ask you about that. Asking for help, but more so in the aspect of how did you begin to do that introspective work, and who did you reach out to? Did you read books first to get started? Yes. Or tell us a little bit more about that experience.
That's a great point to make, because I look at who we are today as just as a society, as a culture. I'm speaking about North America specifically right now, just because that's the playground you and I play in. I'd imagine a lot of your listeners are also in North America. And when we look at just cultural shifts that we've seen in the last 20 years, a lot of that's been driven by technology. technology and just access to information, but also misinformation. We got some good and some bad. We can duke it out any way we want and debate this all day long, but I'll leave the politics to politicians. And all I can say is that if we choose, we have access to so much positive, reinforcing, uplifting, as well as life-changing content. But do we choose to seek it? Do we choose to consume it? Because what goes into this 6 inches between the ears, it will come out in some fashion. And it usually comes out in our actions, our thoughts, how we speak, how we show up. I recognize that in life. And I recognize the things that were influencing me weren't leading me down a path where I felt happy. I felt joy. I felt fulfilled. And bang your head. And times I'm a movie buff. I can see the comic book posters in the back here. I'm a nerd that way. I love that stuff. I'm very nostalgic of that. But I love the stories, right? The stories of people that are supernatural. They go above and beyond what we believe is possible. And this happens in real life all the time, right? And when we find those stories, it inspires all of us to hopefully, and I say hopefully, because I see this in everybody that I meet. And I believe you have this too as well, based on your experiences and what we talked about before we hit record today, was this ability to see in others the potential that maybe they can't see in themselves. And I'm just very grateful that once I got into my early 30s and I had this life-changing event, and I'll speak to that in a second here, which is really framed around a question that my wife asked me. But at 32, almost 33 years old, I decided that, okay, enough's enough. I need some help. I need to learn a better way of living my life and not have to rely on all these exterior, like alcohol, and even sometimes that led to narcotic use. And I'm not proud. I've also done other things under the influence of those things. I've made choices and said things and done some actions that I'm not proud of. Do I regret them? Of course I do. If I had a chance to redo them, would I do the same thing again? No, not knowing what I know now, especially knowing who I am now. But at first, when I first started down the journey of the inner development, I'll tell you, it was really scary. I'm just being honest, because sometimes we get really good at distracting ourselves from ever taking a look inward. We're sometimes worried about what we're going to find.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the fear? What was it that you thought you were going to discover?
It was more so what I also thought others would discover about me. And that was the thing that really affected me the most, was this idea that others are going to see me differently than I've wanted them to perceive me as. We have a certain way of just showing up, and we show up a certain way because we want to give off an impression and ultimately develop a perception of who we are, what we're about, and we want people to think about us a certain way. But a lot of the times, it's not necessarily genuine. If I'm fully honest with you today, this last week and a half, I've had some mental health struggles. I have. I've had some really low periods. I got into a fight with my daughter last week, my 19-year-old. And
yeah, you have tears now.
Yeah, and 9-year-old, both girls, so that's karma. But it's the best thing in my life. It was my kids, my wife, my family. I love it. It's one of my main values. And I didn't always honor that, though. But in this last week, we had a fight, and we haven't really resolved that yet. She's been house sitting, so she hasn't been at home. So we've had this space, and it's amazing how we get caught up in these mental patterns of just repeating things over and over. And so I found myself in a bit in that cycle this last week, and I've emerged out of it now, thankfully, and we're starting to reconcile that issue, and that's nice. But I know who I was years ago. I didn't have the faculties or the understanding, nor the resources to know how to reconcile. That's what I achieved through doing some of that inner work, that introspective work. And of course, having some professionals be able to help me understand what it was that I was exploring. And I think that's the problem, was a lot of us try to go this on our own. We might pick up a book, we watch a great TED Talk, we listen to some inspiring podcasts, and we chat to a couple people that we've met that we have a certain perception of, that they understand this, they've got it all figured out. So whatever they tell me has got to be, maybe that's what I need to do. And then we find out, maybe this isn't the right way for me. But sometimes we have to go explore it to figure that out. And I've been doing this for 13 years now, since I made that decision. And for anybody that's listening, if you're struggling with something similar, listen, I know it's hard, but I also know there's always an opportunity to change. There's always an opportunity to take a line from your book, is draw that line in the sand and recognize everything that's led me up to this exact moment. It's okay. This line is a representation of that, but I am now stepping over that line. It's a clean beach in front of me. There's no footsteps here. What path am I going to create now? And there's something to that fresh start and what it can do for us. But to make it the best start, clarity breeds confidence. When we feel more confident, we procrastinate less, we take decisive action, we're in a more creative mood, if you will, or mindset, and we're able to just lean in, explore internally, who is it that we really are? Why are we?
Who we want to be.
Exactly. Thank you. Because that gives us shape and direction. And that's what we can fill in. And it is daunting. It is intimidating at times. I'm just being fully transparent here. But I'll tell you, as keen as that work has been, it's always been worth it. Because what I've gained from it, as far as deeper connections, greater understanding, deeper love and friendship. But also, I realized that after being in a career for some years, that was no longer my path.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And that was intimidating because I honestly, I was a partner in the company. I was like, I'm here for life. This is do or die kind of thing. Like I really felt that this is my path, but things change when we change. And sometimes we're afraid to admit that the thing I'm doing right now doesn't fulfill me anymore. I'm feeling drawn to do something else, but making that leap, that change, especially the longer we've deeply entrenched that path, it feels a lot harder to get out.